joining us via Skype with the latest on the VA healthcare scandal, Amber Barno, a veteran of the United States Army, where she served as a helicopter pilot. Amber, let's draw an analogy to your days as a chopper pilot, taking the view from above. As you're taking a look at this, now we get the notice of the link to these problems way back to 2008. Would you go so far as to say that this administration ignored the issue when it was brought to their attention?
I do. I think it was very convenient that throughout this entire time that the VA scandal has been brought to light, that the Obama administration has failed to say that they knew of these scheduling problems and the inability to fix them way back in 2008. They were told of these scheduling practices and how they were trying to replace the failed system with a new one. As far back, they've been working to fix it as far back as 2000. And then since 2005, they've spent over $127 million on trying to fix the problem. And we all know, as to date, with the hundreds of veterans that have died as a result of these failed wait times and patients getting appointments, it still isn't fixed.
And Amber, we hear a lot of concern about the delay coming from Congress right now. There is the Senate bill that's been passed, but the House is waiting to pass that bill. Some folks are concerned about that, but at the same hand, you mentioned the money that's been spent on this issue, and there is also a concern about throwing good money after bad. What's your level of frustration or a lack of frustration when it comes to the Senate bill that's been passed over there, but yet to pass in the House to deal with the urgency of this matter?
Well, what I don't want to see is I don't want to see a piece of legislation go through that is not going to fix the VA. We don't need a piece of legislation that isn't going to do anything except cost taxpayers more money and then do nothing to fix the VA. Veterans will receive the same terrible care and it's not fix anything. So I think what needs to happen before the bill is passed is they really do need, the Department of Veterans Affairs needs to work with the Congressional Budget Office and figure out how much this is going to cost in terms of letting veterans seek private care when the wait times are too long or the distance is too long. And right now, the VA is not cooperating with the CBO and isn't giving them accurate reportings in terms of how much this could potentially cost. So I think that rolls into some of the holdup with Congress wants to know how much this is going to cost before they pass this bill.
Amber, what impact is Bob McDonnell's information going to have?
Well, I think that it's going to be an easy confirmation. I think he's going to get a lot of hard questions in his confirmation, but I think that I am very optimistic with him being the new secretary once confirmed. I think it'll be nice to have some fresh leadership, someone from outside government. It's kind of a catch-22 situation where that's going to be beneficial, that he isn't pro-bureaucracy, pro-government, that he has experience managing a large company with lots of employees and making it be effective and efficient. But I also think that at the same time, that can also be sort of a drawback in that he doesn't have experience with how a bureaucracy works, because it's a whole different game and there's red tape everywhere like we've always discussed, and he's going to have to learn how you break through that.
Which brings us back to the bill that passed the Senate, Amber, and awaits passage in the House, this, quote, compromise involving Senator McCain of Arizona and, of course, the Veterans Committee Chair in the Senate, Bernie Sanders, the independent who caucuses with the Democrats from Vermont. When you talk about being able to change the culture, if those pro-union language remains in some semblance, isn't it going to be very tough for Secretary McDonnell if the Senate bill ends up going through the House as it is right now?
Well, that's exactly right. That's why the language needs to be tightened up in that bill. And like I mentioned, we want a bill that's going to reform the VA, not just something that looks good on paper and is a quick fix. We need something that is actually going to change things, and that starts with accountability. The secretary needs to be able to have the authority to fire his top-level managers who are infecting this culture within the VA. And we're not going to see change until that happens, until he is allowed to hold his employees accountable and say, you are responsible for what goes on in your department. None of this, oh, we're going to do personal evaluations and it's going to take 2 years to roll out the process to see if you can get fired or not. We need clear language that is very direct and says if you're not doing your job, you can then be fired. Until that happens, there isn't going to be reform. It starts with that step.
Well, Amber, I don't know if anybody's approached you about running for Congress yet, but I think we can maybe see that happening based on your ability to grasp these issues and talk simply about what needs to happen here. But let's just pretend you were in Congress and sitting on the House Veteran Affairs Committee. What would you ask Bob McDonnell first during the confirmation process?
I would say, what are you going to do that's different? I would like to see what he thinks, just as we talked about at the beginning of the segment, in terms of almost 14 years of them working on this IT update so they can actually go to a paperless system to increase these patient wait times or decrease the patient wait times. So I would like to really see how he wants to work with private sector technology to make the VA better, because I think that's key in terms of fixing some of the problems. IT at the VA is just another example of failures within that department. I think that in order to fix some of these issues, Bob McDonnell is going to have to look outside of government, work with some private sector technology firms, and use some of their technology to update this instead of looking inward.
And let me correct myself, I should say Senate confirmation process, and you'd be a good senator too, perhaps.
Well, already in line for a promotion. I think you've got someone who might end up managing your campaign right here, Amber, but in all sincerity, we really do appreciate your perspective, and we look forward to talking to you again in the not too distant future.
Thanks for having me.
You just heard what Amber Barno had to say about the veterans' health care scandal, about what the new Veterans Secretary needs to do to address that scandal and make fundamental change within the Veterans Affairs Administration, within the VA. Your take on that is welcomed and encouraged. Why don't you tweet us your comments at Newsmax TV, #America's Forum. There's also newsmaxtv.com/comment.